Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are in the world joining us from. My name is Ali Gagalang, and I am the Executive Director of Breaking Silence Movement. It's truly such an honor to welcome you all to our NGO CSW70 Parallel Event titled The Great Body Safety Adventure, the conversation that changes everything. Thank you all for being here today and making time for what I believe is a really, really important conversation. As you may know, the NGO CSW Parallel Event, or the NGO Commission of the Status of Women, brings together advocates, policymakers, and organizations from around the world to accelerate progress towards gender equality. And preventing violence against women and children remains one of the most urgent priorities within that work. And today's discussion contributes to that global effort by focusing on prevention, particularly early prevention. And so when we talk about GBV, gender based violence, we often focus on response, right? We talk about legal accountability, survivor services, crisis support, and systems that help people after the harm has already occurred. All of those things are essential, but today we are taking a slightly different angle and asking an earlier question. What if prevention started much sooner? So what if children grew up understanding from a young age that their bodies belong to them, that boundaries matter, and that respect and consent are part of everyday relationships? So these ideas may sound simple, but they shape how people understand safety, autonomy, and power for the rest of their lives. And that's the really heart of our conversation today. So today's discussion is also connected to the launch of the Breaking Silence movement's children's book called The Great Body Safety Adventures, as you can see in my background. It is created by as it was created to help educators, families, and communities start conversation about body safety and consent in ways that are age appropriate, empowering, and accessible. But the book itself is really just the starting point, right? Prevention of gender-based violence requires collaboration across families, educators, psychologists, advocates, and communities. And that's why exactly I'm so excited about the group of people we've brought together for this wonderful discussion. So, let me introduce our panelists. And as I call your name, feel free to briefly say hello to everyone joining us today and later watching this recorded session. So, first, Kita Luthi, right? Kita is the founder of Breaking Silence Movement and the original author of The Great Body Safety Adventure. Her work focuses on early education, survivor advocacy, and building programs that empower communities to address gender based violence proactively. And on a personal note, Kira is my oldest and dearest friends, and we've known each other for many, many years. And I've had the privilege of watching this idea, this book, grow from early conversations into something that is now reaching families and communities around the world. So, Kira, it's wonderful to have you here. I'll let you say a quick hello to
Hi,
everyone.
everybody. Hi to all. And I'm happy to be here. I'm really excited to talk about the book and to learn more as well about our other panelists and exchange the importance of what we're talking about here today.
Absolutely. And next we have Karen Sol, a licensed clinical psychologist based in the Philippines who works closely with survivors of domestic violence, rape, and psychological abuse. Karen's work focuses on trauma informed care and community based mental health support, helping survivors navigate recovery while also advocating for stronger systems of prevention and support. So, Karen, thank you so much for joining us today. Feel free to say hello to everyone.
Hello, everyone. I'm Karen, and I'm a clinical psychologist from the Philippines. It's an honor to join the CSW70, and I'm excited to have this conversation with you all. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Karen. We're also joined by Carolina Gonzalez. Carolina is the founder and CEO of Luxury Marketing Connect Monaco, where she leads strategic communications and marketing for brands targeting ultra high network audiences. But before building her career in luxury marketing and public relations, Carolina spent many years in education, teaching English to students across generations, from children as young as 1 year old to adult learners in their 90s. So during that time, she focused on creating safe and inclusive learning environments, adapting her teaching to different learning styles, and supporting students with attention differences such as ADHD. She also volunteered in special needs school, which further shaped her commitment to inclusion and people centered environments. Those same values, as she said, psychological safety, respect, and thoughtful communication, continues to guide her leadership today. So, Carolina, we're so glad you're here with us. Please say hello to our audiences.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you all for including me. Um, for me, it's very important to be here as a speaker because I really, me also as a kid that had problems in school and then being a teacher, it is still very important to create a safe environment, open to communication and open every to always hear what the kids have to say. So I'm very grateful to be today here. And I really appreciate that you counted with me on this. So thank you.
Absolutely. No, thank you. Thank you, Carolina. And finally, Ali Ball. I have to admit that she might be my favorite panel today, mostly because we share the same name. Ali is a political science major at the University of Oregon with a minor in global studies, focusing on, is that right? Minor, right? Minor in global studies, perfect. Focusing on public policy, civic engagement, and democratic institutions in the United States and internationally. She's currently part of the Emerge Oregon class of 2026. It's a leadership program that trains Democratic women to run for office and win. Through her work with organizations like the ACLU of Oregon and the Women's Foundation of Oregon, she has focused on storytelling, advocacy, and advancing gender equity and student engagement. Ali is passionate about strengthening local democracy and empowering young people to engage in the political process. And she's preparing to run for local office in the city of Milwaukee in Oregon. So, Ali, welcome. I'd like to greet everyone as well.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everybody. It's an honor to be here and super important, especially for the career path that I'm going in and being in the thick of community in elementary schools and high schools. So I'm excited for this conversation.
Amazing. Thank you, Ali. And it was great to have you all. It's great to have you all here in this very, very important conversation. I'm really excited about it just because it brings everyone, because each of you brings a different perspective to prevention, right? From community organizing with Ali to psychology with Karen, early childhood education to Carolina, and Kira with her amazing storytelling with the book and the advocacy with Breaking Silence. And so we're ready for this discussion, and so let's dive in, right? I'd like to begin by zooming out a bit and talking about prevention more broadly. So I will start with you, Ali, since you went in, you came in last. um Ali, I'd love to start with you from a community organizing perspective. Why do you think conversations about early prevention and consent sometimes struggle to gain traction at a local level? What do you think are the barriers do you see within communities when trying to shift from reactive responses to preventive approaches?
Yeah, and you touched on this earlier. And one of the things, my priorities for campaigning is public safety, but specifically preventative public safety. And so those conversations have to start at home. And I was always taught that my body is my own, and to respect it and to make sure that other people respect it as well. And so I think that communities find it an uncomfortable conversation, but it's super, super important, especially when people are in elementary school. That's when you start to learn about consent. And so I hope that, this book and resources and tools like this make their way into classrooms, and we start seeing more inclusive health classes, we start seeing more diverse health classes, and we start focusing on consent and prevention before we start getting into other things, because that's really the basis and the start of all of this.
Absolutely. And I also see with with like with consent, right? There's sometimes a struggle to gain traction at a local level, right? Sometimes there are groups that actually campaign against, you know, teaching this in school, in elementary school, in middle school, in high school. And so how do you think how do you think we can get through those barriers?
Yeah, I think that we need to have serious conversations about who's representing us and what their interests are. And that, if we're putting children first means that they have the tools necessary to protect themselves and to look after one another. And so we need to have candidates that reflect that. And we need to make sure that prevention and preventative harm and health safety is being taught regularly and being talked about regularly, not just in the classrooms, but in community conversations, in city hall, in assemblies, in classrooms, etc.
No, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. You're right, that people should be able to evaluate candidates that are for your values and for your community's values. I think that's a very smart approach. Karen, I'd love to bring you into this conversation here. From a developmental psychology perspective, how do young children form their understanding of boundaries and autonomy? And what difference does that make when these ideas are introduced early on rather than avoided altogether?
Right, thank you, Ali. From a developmental psychology perspective, children do not learn about boundaries through lectures. They learn it through relationships, modeling, and everyday interactions. Children are forming what we call internal working models of the word, wherein when caregivers respond with respect for their bodily autonomy, simple things like asking permission before physical contact, listening when a child says they are uncomfortable, or validating their feelings, children begin to understand that their body belongs to them. And at the same time, they also learn that other people's bodies deserve the same respect. And that's the foundation of consent. What many people do not realize is that children start forming this understanding very early at the age of 3 and 6. And at that stage, their brains are highly receptive to social learning. They absorb cues from the environment about what is acceptable and what is not. And if conversations about boundaries and safety are introduced early, children will develop three important psychological capacities. Number one is body awareness. They learn to recognize when something feels safe and unsafe. Number two is language. They develop the words to express discomfort or to ask for help. And third is the confidence to seek protection. Children who are taught that their voice matters are more likely to report unsafe situations. But when these concepts are avoided, often because adults feel uncomfortable, children are left without the tools to understand or communicate what is happening to them. So, when we normalize conversations about body autonomy and developmentally appropriate ways, we are not introducing something that is harmful. We are giving our children the language of safety.
No,
I love
absolutely. And I think that's you're spot on, right? Karen. And that's exactly why we are introducing or reintroducing the body safety book, the great body safety adventure. It's because it's teaching children, not only does it teach children body consent and body autonomy for themselves, but it's also teaching respecting other people's boundaries. But it's a really great tool for educators like us, and advocates like us, um a tool to help start that conversation, because like you said, Karen, some parents find it really hard to start that conversation. It may be uncomfortable, maybe, their religion forbids it, or sometimes it's cultural stigma, right? And so this body safety adventure book is really a great tool. I'm biased because we are publishing it, but I really think it's a great tool for educators, parents, and families to start early on teaching kids body consent, body autonomy. And so Carolina, you've spent a lot of time in early childhood education settings. So how do you think children actually absorb these lessons about autonomy and respect in those environments, and what happens when those moments are missed?
Yeah, thank you. So, it's true that Karen said a lot of things, which I can only reinforce, in this sense, and talk from personal experience, right? Being a teacher is not the same as being a parent. So we usually see, let's say, like, I always like to think like it's like the other side sometimes, but I see parents and teachers as a team, right? The more we work together as a team, the better it will be for the kids. And if one of these parts are missing, there's a huge gap. Um, so in order to like reply to your question and a little bit like to continue what Karen was saying, I do really think, and from my experience, um, that asking, right? It's really important, um, and not doing the things for them. So you're teaching them that there's a boundary there and that they are able to do it themselves. In my classes, for example, I always encouraged kids to do things by themselves. Even sometimes they came and asked me, specifically to help them. Sometimes they just need the tools, talking about tools, right? They just need the tools, or they just need, let's say, sometimes what they even seek is like your consent, right? Like, can I do it on my own? Maybe because there's self-doubt, maybe because they're not used to it, or it can be like for a million reasons. So I think that asking them and encouraging them to do it on their own, it's a great way to promote this authority, this autonomy um that they can build. um Same goes with respect. There was something that also Karen said that I had also taken notes, which is modeling. Kids, they repeat absolutely everything. Even me, when I was a teacher, I could even tell which kids they had older brothers, right? Because they have someone else that they're really close to, so they copy absolutely everything. And even you could tell they were brothers, even if you didn't know that they were brothers or sisters or siblings, just by the way they would act, because they would react to situations the same way. So modeling is very important. Setting like a good, let's say, role model and a nice environment and a safe environment, it's really important. And treat the boundaries with kindness, right? I know sometimes um, it might sound a little bit, I don't know, bizarre, if you allow me, but it's true that sometimes we might be tired, we might be have a lot of things, but it's really important because kids are always listening. So they're like little sponges, mostly from 3 to 6, when it's like they are really developing and they are in this early stage that also Karen was mentioning. So really treat these boundaries with kindness. When they also express, I'm upset, I don't like this, or I don't want, there's always a reason behind. And I think that is our responsibility also to listen to them, ask them further, and understand what they are trying to say. Because another important thing, and with this I will finish, is that not all kids communicate the same way. Me working with kids with special needs, I discovered that language, it's not just English or what we understand as language, right? Body language, it's really important. In special schools, they even have pictogram as language. We have sign language, and language comes in a lot of forms. So we really need to be aware that these children maybe are communicating us something that maybe we are not understanding because we're not thinking in the same language that they are communicating. So it's also our responsibility to shift. Let's say it's just, I always put an example as if it was different languages in terms of like English, Spanish, Italian. It's exactly the same, but different languages that can imply also body language, and it can imply reading between lines, which sometimes it's a little bit more complicated. But for me, those are important pillars to teach them about autonomy. And I think it's something that it has to come natural. We don't have to force it. If those are missing, then there's a real gap on communication. There's and it can lead to bigger psychological problems in terms of not being able to communicate just because of they don't have enough confidence, or because just simply nobody guided them how to do it.
No, yeah, absolutely. There are two things that I would love to highlight in that, Carolina. First, when you said teaching children autonomy is very important, because I it's true, because it teaches them independence, right? And teaching them independence teach them to be confident about themselves, about their body, but also they feel safe to report any incidents or report anything to their ed to whoever their guardian is, their parents or their educators, right? So it gives them that space to express themselves if they're not feeling comfortable, or they don't like it, but it also, I believe it's also important, like you said, Carolina, that parents knows how to read body language, right? Parents, educators, we should all be trained about not just like hearing them, but also observing a kid, observing your children, if they like something or they don't like something, or they're feeling well or unwell or feeling uncomfortable, right? That's absolutely correct. And that brings us directly to the inspiration behind today's event. Kira, as the author of The Great Body Safety Adventure, what gaps did you observe in how children are currently taught about body safety and consent? And how did those gaps influence how you approached writing this book?
Okay. First of all, with everything that all the panelists have said, I'm so happy to hear those factors, because all of the keywords, uncomfortable situation, language of safety, and different types of languages came into a huge high consideration when we were studying to publish such a book as The Great Body Safety Adventure. We have found in the first part of the question, to answer that, what are the gaps? Basically, in the beginning, there was really no gap because there was nothing existent. So there was not even a gap to fill in, because there are no tools to teach kids or guide parents or guide teachers on how to actually tell children and provide them the tools on how they can speak about their bodies and how they should treat it. And at the same time, it is, again, uncomfortable for many parents, for many households, whatever the environment is in that household, whether religion, whether culture. Body safety is always a very sensitive topic. We always talk about how to address when gender-based violence happened already, but nobody really knows how to answer, but how to prevent it. So the way that we saw it is that there was no existing solution to provide in the smallest unit of the society, which was the family. And then the second layer of the society is the school, basically. And at the same time, now we're getting to the second layer, which Karen is saying about the language of safety. Now if they're aware of their body, now we give them the tool, right? Ali was saying about the uncomfortable situation, community guidelines, it has to be talked every day. But now what kind of language are we going to give it to them so they are also understanding it easier? We cannot give the same scientific body parts that a 15-year-old would know to a 3-year-old. And this is also something that we needed to consider, what would be the easiest relation to private body parts. And so when we did the entire study, we came up with colors, because kids are, their first exposure are colors. And there are basically two colors that they're always, they can identify what it means. When it's a red color, it means it's stop just because of the traffic lights. And when it's green, that means it's go. And we found these neutral terms that private zones are actually called red zones. So when it's a red zones, it's something that they own and nobody else can see or touch it. And in that sense, this kind of language of safety is embedded in their daily life, because at the same time we reinforce in that red zone terminology that after that recognizing red zone, they need to also learn how to say no, because many kids do not know how to say no for many reasons, maybe because they need to respect their adults, or so whatever an adult is telling them to do, they have to respect that adult, but we need to make them sure that they know how to say no. And with following now with what Carolina is saying about the teaching them with boundaries, with kindness, this is when we reinforce the entire concept of the book, wherein we also tell the children what to do when this happens, which is to tell their parents or teachers about it. And on an overall perspective, what you all three said, including you, Ali, but you know the book already, so I'm not including you, but with our panelists, what they said is normalization. The most difficult thing about many different households is a lot of households are very conservative and they don't want facts that are very much straightforward. So the way that we have created the book in itself is saying no and understanding red zones has to be as normal as brushing your teeth, as eating vegetables, as drinking 10 glasses per day, as changing your clothes every time after school. And that's basically the entire flow of the book, introducing them that they can keep their body healthy by eating vegetables, by brushing their teeth, etc., etc. But also they can keep their body safe. This is why your body has red zones and you need to learn how to say no. And basically this kind of tools, once it's reinforced every day, then the kid, it's not something that's new to them and that they need to download it. Because if saying no, and if my red zones is as basic as brushing my teeth, then it's just basically part of my life. And as a mother, I have seen it with my 6-year-old son. He knows exactly how to put his boundaries with his peers, and he calls his private zones red zones, and he changes on his own. He goes to the toilet on his own. And I'm just so proud to see that ownership where it was non-existent when it was our age, that there were no tools such as this that was provided.
No, absolutely. And that takes me back to we grew up, Kira. Kira, we grew up in the Filipinos, like in the Filipino culture, right? Um, Especially if in a Filipino culture, it's very conservative, right? We love sweeping things under the table. We don't talk about sex, safe sex. We don't talk about body autonomy. Especially us, Kita, we went to a Catholic high school. We were not taught safe sex. We are not taught about body consent, body autonomy. And so I think that shaped a lot of our, language around talking about sex. And it's also talking about body consent as well, body autonomy. And we've always go for it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and also with when it comes to prevention, it's always about the women adjusting how we are being seen by other people. When we were taught in our time, I would say before, when we were talking about this body safety adventure book, when we were told, oh, you have to be careful when you go on the street outside, so you cannot wear short skirt, you cannot wear something that's plunging. And I don't think that it's just applicable to conservative households. It's for everyone, because even in Europe,
Absolutely.
when you're a woman, you go out and you say, okay, I'm going to put such a makeup. People, especially during that time, you know, when there was no Me Too movement yet, it was like you were asking for it. So basically, the prevention system that was embedded in our brains as women, or we have to adjust to how the society is looking
Absolutely.
at us. And even up to now, when you're a career woman and you are on your suit, on your power suit, you're a businesswoman, you're a politician, Ali, you are still judged in a way. What is she here for? And the prevention is always, is she dressed well? How is her face finished? But that's not how society should be anymore for the for our
Absolutely.
future children. It has to be, we have our own body and we own it, and it's just as easy and as default as breathing, and that's basic.
Absolutely. Yes, and that's what the body, what I'm trying to get was like with our culture growing up in a conservative culture, this book teaches us normalization, right?
Yes.
That we didn't have when we were growing up. Especially personally, growing up in a conservative culture, growing up in a conservative conservative community family, right? And so this book really gives us that nor language of normalization of like, yes, brushing my teeth is as normal as teaching, saying no or teaching about body consent and body autonomy. Absolutely. So I'd like to shift our conversations towards solutions, right? We've talked about the problem, we've talked about the gaps, we talk about issues surrounding, normalization of talking about body consent, body autonomy. I would like to, for Carolina, for parents or educators who might be listening and wondering where to even begin. What are some simple, age appropriate ways adults can reinforce autonomy and respect in everyday interactions with children?
Yes, so here I have a little list because I didn't want to, I think they're all equally important and I didn't want to like miss any. So the the important here is that the strategy to be simple but very consistent. We cannot go here and there and do one thing and then the other because that's confusing for children. So routine is very important, for example, right? So the importance of using these strategies, let's say, in a consistent way in everyday routine. And as Kira was saying, just being part of daily life. It's what is most important. It's how it's going to work. Um, it doesn't apply if we just do it one day, right? So said that and said that. First one, I think it would be offer a choice inside the boundaries. Let's say instead of like have this cup, do you want the blue cup or you want the green cup? Or would you like to choose your own clothes or would you like me to help you? Would you like to go to the bathroom on your own or do you need help? So always like giving this option on autonomy. So they can feel safe with their let's say with their the option that they choose. The second one would be and this is something I still use nowadays, right? Normalize the consent language for touch and help. So this I think it's very important even today. Even nowadays when we are doing a photo shoot, for example, and I need to touch someone, or even if it's just fixing the hair, it's always good to ask first, is it okay? May I, if I touch your hair? Like that. You know, you're giving them an awareness and you're allowing them to choose, yes, it's okay, or no, I can fix it myself, or I can do this on my own. Um, for kids, it's the same. Can I pick you up? Do you need help? Would you like to try yourself first? And even encouraging, like, try yourself first. And if you need me, I will always be here to help you. Um, Another important thing that I think that we need to teach is like teach body cues in terms of like listen to your own body. What is your body telling? And this I would also even applies to adults, right? Sometimes we're in autopilot mode, or for example, sometimes kids are just copying what other kids are doing, but maybe it's not the best for them. So listen to your body, listen to yourself. What do you need? What is the best option for you? Because maybe it's not the same option as your peer. Um, then also I came to realize I'm Spanish, so I'm a very I love affection and I'm a really touchy person, let's say, right? Like I like to hug. I'm it's part of my culture. But I'm aware that there's other cultures and even other people that they like their, let's say, boundaries, of course. So always respect that and don't force affection. Even sometimes me when I was kid and being like this, it was very aggressive when you have these people that comes to you and hugs you, and aunts or like that your kid, you don't even know who this person is, and it's like, oh, they grab you, and then so this is very important as well, like to make sure that they are comfortable with that, because maybe there are kids that I have kids that they ask me always for a hug when they enter to the class, but then there were others that just needed a high five. So always don't force affection. It's not, no, you have to go and kiss her, or like go and give a hug. So always like leave a space. Like wouldn't you like to give a hug, for example? It would be more let's say in terms of autonomy and safety, it would be best. um Also, language, I think it's very important, the language that we use. um Mostly when there's a conflict, right? When there's a conflict, as I said, sometimes we are tired, sometimes we have a lot of things to do, but it's really important that we think that their kids are always listening and they are always learning. So be very conscious about the language that we're using. In terms, for example, sometimes they also say things they don't have these rational, or it's going to be consequences in terms of feelings to the other person. So we need this language also to speak to them and make them understand. For example, I didn't like that, so next time uh you know uh I need more space, or next time, please ask. And teaching them also to communicate, not just for themselves, but also for the other people that is surrounding. So they also understand that we all have our boundaries.
Yeah.
And lastly, the last one, I think we have to be very aware of these neurodiversity adjustments that I talked before. We don't talk all the same language. Um, and we as educators and as parents, we need to understand and take a close attention to those differences and communicate with them differently, and being very aware of how they are expressing themselves, right? Also be very aware of like the shifting on attitudes, or of like how they are acting. I had a student, for example, that he had ADHD. He was always like entering like a tornado in the class. He was super excited always, because I was always adapting the classes for him. So he was very happy because he was always have something to do and going up, down, and but one day he entered and he was like, wow, like out of the blue. He was like really, really down. And I realized that, and that was non-body language, right? He was not telling me I'm sad or I'm concerned, but he was telling me with his body and with his how he was acting, right? And it ended up that he was feeling sad and concerned because he didn't know in which parent home. He was sleeping that night. So it was also my job as educator identify that something is happening here, because he is communicating differently than another student that came and came. I'm sad because I don't know. No, he's communicating it to me differently. So I grasped that and I help him to communicate in words or to put his thoughts together and to find a solution together. So these are small daily behaviors that educators and parents can apply, and I think that sincerely it builds up on their age appropriate for all kind of ages. That was also on your question. And these are these daily interactions that will build up on and reinforce autonomy, safety, and respect.
Absolutely. One of the things that stood out to me in that is that I think it's very funny that we have kind of like similar culture of like growing up, right? My parents be like, "This is your auntie, hug her." And you're like, "I had not seen this person in my entire life. Why would I hug her?"
Exactly.
Right? Um Having parents not necessarily stop it but give children consent really teaches children consent and autonomy, and it doesn't go through, the next generation, right? We are getting ahead of the curve of like, okay, we teach kids that you really don't have to, but if you want to, then you could. And so absolutely. And so Karen, many caregivers feel unsure, right? Like talking about it right now. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, now, like, if I was a mom, if I was my mom, I'd be like, oh, then what should I do? Right. So right now, many educators, many parents might be unsure or even uncomfortable about talking about consent with young children. And so what kinds of languages or approach make these conversations more accessible and maybe more developmentally appropriate?
Mm-hmm. So that discomfort is very real, and many caregivers worry that talking about consent might introduce topics that feel too complex or too early for the children. And I have to agree, I totally agree with what Carlina has said. I will just reinforce everything. Okay. So young children do not need complicated ideas. In fact, it can begin with what Carolina just said, very simple everyday language. Another important concept or factor is teaching children the difference between, again, the safe touch and the unsafe touch, but framing it in a way that emphasizes communication and trust. For instance, the caregiver can say, if someone touches you and it makes you feel confused, scared, or uncomfortable, you can always tell a trusted adult. And another powerful strategy is practicing everyday consent in the family. For example, instead of just saying, give your uncle a hug, okay, we can just say, would you like to give a hug or a high five or just wave hello? That small shift teaches children that affection should be voluntary. Okay.
Mhm.
And you ask about the approaches, and I would like to reinforce this with stories and books are also powerful tools because children often understand complex ideas more easily through storytelling. And stories can create safe emotional distance while communicating important lessons. That is why also caregivers should approach these discussions with calmness and openness because children learn that asking questions on their bodies or is normal and welcome. Okay, so it's about teaching them that self-respect, respect for others, and confidence in seeking help is not something that feels wrong. So those are some of the skills that children that can protect the children, not just in their childhood, but throughout their lives. Thank you.
No, I really like that. I really love not only giving children the option to hug or not hug, but giving children of what type of affection they can show, right? it doesn't have to be hug. It doesn't always have to be a hug. It could be a high five. It could be, a wave. And so that gives them more options of like, oh, affection doesn't always mean immediate like connection or like immediate touch, right? Amazing. Kira, Miss Karen talked about storytelling as a powerful tool to teach children body autonomy and body consent. Can so can you tell us how storytelling can often make difficult topics easier to approach, like Miss Karen has said. How can books like The Great Body Safety Adventure help families begin these conversations in what feels more natural and less intimidating?
Right. Well, I spoke about it as well earlier. It's as easy as brushing their teeth, and children, they are the number one thing that they're most aware of is their body. My son asks me every day questions about what is his armpit for, what is his fingers for, why does he have thumbs, and why do we need ears? Even he knows that it's for hearing. They always ask what their body parts are for. And the most important is when it comes to private parts, it has to be very soft, and the way that we answer what is our nose for or what is our eyes for has to be the same way that we speak about what are our private zones for. And this is why the book on the Great Body Safety Adventure, we made it sure that it's going to be something as normal and as basic as brushing their teeth, drinking 10 glasses water per day, eating vegetables, because they know that that's important. Every day we tell our kids to brush their teeth, or have you brushed your teeth? Have you eaten your vegetables? But it has to be in the same dedication wherein we tell them nobody else could touch or see your red zones, and other people, you cannot also see or touch other people's red zones. And it has to be this kind of a very smooth words as well, in their own understanding, that it registers in their small but big brains. But these simple concepts make it easy for them to understand that, but it's my default, it's standard, like, so they will actually ask a different question, that is, but why is he touching your red zones? But why did you see his red zones? And that's when it multiplies to their peers, and they have this kind of agency as well with their environment, and it becomes a domino effect. And that's exactly what Breaking Silence is standing up for, because we want to be the beacon, so that all the people that are part of our community are considered ambassadors. I consider every single one of you here as an ambassador for this advocacy. Yes, we do have an organization. Yes, we have a book, but the way that we actually believe in things and take action on it is what matters most, because the first people that will be affected are the ones who are closest to us. And I always believe in providing solutions to the smallest unit of society, which is the household. And then, of course, how we can bring in educators and then the policy discussions to support and reinforce these household unit solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've mentioned it several times, normalizing, talking about um, body safety, body autonomy, a kid's own agency. But it's also, I think we also should mention that it doesn't have to be a really, really sad or bogged down conversation, right? I think the body
Yes.
safety adventure makes it fun for
Yes.
us, for parents, for educators to teach children about, their own agency, their own body, your body consent and body autonomy. In fact, in the book, we've added a few. This is the second version of this book, but the thing that I love most about this book, aside from, the mantra and the other stuff, it's the games that we've put in there. There are
Yes.
there are find the difference, find something missing
Activity.
or yes, and there's also like, tracing and finding words, and it's really fun and makes it fun for kids to learn, right? I think some kids learn different ways. Some kids learn that, it's fun. They want to learn in a more fun way, and that's what the body safety adventure is. And
Yes.
you've also touched upon policy frameworks, and I would love to bring in Ali here, because we've talked about a lot of solutions. We've talked about how to talk to children, what language to use, how do we, like, thinking about it, like, how do you put that in a community level, right? Ali, I want to ask about the community level, right? How can grassroots organizing help bring conversations about prevention in schools, communities, and in leadership places?
Yeah, I think one of the big things is advocating for an integration of age appropriate consent and healthy relationship education into school systems. One of the things that happens at the University of Oregon is in the fall and in the spring, you have to take an online course on consent and prevention and drugs and alcohol. And if you don't take it, you get a hold on your registration. And it's interactive. You take little quizzes throughout. They do, these little silly videos of scenarios and things like that. So it's engaging. And so finding a way, I think, to implement something like that where it's, not just a teacher who may not feel comfortable or wants to create more of a lighter environment when talking about this. That's another way and another option. And so, yeah, I definitely think I like the interactive part of this book, and I think that that helps take away some of that uncomfortable stigma that's around it. And then um, another policy solution is just investing in community-based education and prevention programs. And so organizations, like the Women's Foundation, working directly with families and educators and young people, and how we could best position ourselves to have these conversations in, culturally responsive ways, I think is also super important. And so there's lots of things that we could do on the policy level that isn't just like, the nitty gritty, but also making it super language inclusive, right? I could give a whole spiel about land use and zoning because like I'm a nerd about that, but people might not understand everything that I say. Same goes with this conversation. And so making sure that we're being as inclusive as possible, and then finding ways that the city can support that or that schools can support that.
Absolutely. And I think in a more, one of the things that I really love about community organizing is that it's very local, right? We know the issues that our community is affected by, right? And if we know and we understand the importance of talking about children, the safety of children, the safety of their community is woven together, is, it's the same thing, then we get policymakers, we get, legislators to talk about it more and put it into policies and laws and regulations, right? That's very important. Thank you, Ali. So before we move into audience questions, I'd love to open the floor briefly to any of our panelists, right? Whoever wants to talk. What is one misconception about early consent education that you would most like to challenge? Anyone? One misconception about early consent education. I will popcorn it, Miss Karen, because early misconception.
Yes, one misconception that I often encounter is the belief that teaching children about consent somehow takes away their innocence. So I like to challenge that because in psychological perspective, the opposite is true. So when children are given age appropriate language about their bodies, boundaries, and safety, they develop a stronger sense of self. They
Yeah.
learn that their body deserves respect and they can speak up if something feels wrong. So, consent education for young children is not about introducing adult concepts. When we avoid these conversations because they feel uncomfortable, we unintentionally leave children without the tools they need to recognize unsafe situations. So, early consent education is not about fear, it's about empowerment and protection. It's about teaching respect, boundaries, and communication in ways children can understand. So, the challenge here is not that children are incapable of learning about consent, but the challenge is that adults often lack the tools and the language to teach it. So,
Oh,
there.
I really love that. It's such a that's such a debate in society of like talking about sex or, consent, autonomy to young children. It takes away their innocence. It's such a debate. And I've heard all of those arguments online, online discourse within within communities in policy halls and like law, and so I'm really glad that you were able to kind of like burst that bubble, right? Carolina, do you have anything to add, any misconception?
Yeah, I would also like tap again. I know I said it before, but um the misconception that we all speak the same language. I think that adaptability it's really key. I know I said it, but I think it's something that a lot of people miss in terms of educating, in terms of education. So different. I would like also to highlight like what I said before, different languages that are not limited to speaking language, but also body language, routines, etc., etc.
Absolutely. That's true. Like you said, we have to learn how to read someone's a kid's body to see if they're comfortable or not. We kind of just like have to be observant of our children, right? We have to take their emotions into account, take their words into account because some,
Mhm.
in some households, which is, unfortunate, but in some households, kids don't have necessarily their voices to speak out, or they don't have the confidence to speak out about anything really. It doesn't have to be, it can be trivial, it can be life altering, but I think it's important that adults, educators, advocates, parents, to understand that there is weight in a kid's words, right? In kids' words and how they feel, right? They're very important. It's as important as an adult's feelings and words, right? Anything else to add, Ali, Kira?
Yeah, I think a common misconception is that um, education around consent has to come from adults lecturing students. I also think that peer to peer conversations are super important. And I also went to a private Catholic college prep high school. But we were a pretty progressive high school, and we had a Students Against Sexual Assault club. And so that was a great way that helped inform students from other students. And so, maybe a policy decision or something within the community is like kids from high school going to elementary schools and teaching about consent and things like that. So I think that just really pushing against that, we don't have agency or we don't have the life experience. I think that peer to peer conversations are super important.
Absolutely. And unfortunately for us, Gita and I, it wasn't a progressive high school. Um, and so I think that is such a learning experience. I don't know, I can't speak for you, Kira, but for me, it's such a learning experience. And it's something that we want to grow out of. And it taught us really of like, oh, there is something outside of these halls, outside of this education. And I think you're absolutely correct, Ali. It's like, every single one of us have different experiences, and so talking to your peer about it, because they have other experiences at home, in their own communities, and so talking to each other about it definitely widens the education. It widens what we learn from one another. Kira, would you like to add anything before I move on to another reflection question?
Well, for me, I just love what everybody just said, especially Having a 6-year-old son, and I was writing the book since he was 2 years old, and of course, as a parent who grew up in this kind of environment wherein there were no tools or there were no education, reproductive health education is so lacking because there is no proper policy that really enforces it in the school system or educational system. It's kind of an option. The thing that I'm really I would like for the early education basically to be addressed with is at a level of policy, wherein many schools believe that if they put it in their curriculum, maybe they're going overboard and some household will not actually agree with that curriculum. I totally disagree with that because our children spend much more time in school than in our houses. And I have been seeing with my own son that he takes a lot of his habits as well from schools at the same time, and also balancing out with household rules. And so if there is a team and an ecosystem that we need to provide as a huge solution, I would really love for policies to really enforce something so strongly in educational system from when they were young, not only when they're in high school. But of course, again, we're talking about age appropriation, right, as well. So it has to be something totally different on preschool, something totally different on elementary, something totally different from high school, especially when it comes to understanding their hormones and all their reproductive health system, especially when young women start to have their own menstruation period. But it starts when they're young. And if this is missing, it's like we're skipping an entire level. You know, when you play a video game, you have to go from level 1, 2, 3. If you go when you enter a video game and then you start already at level 10, it's like you have to have a backlog of an entire knowledge of all the controls that you need to study to be able to get through that level. And being able to give it to them from the very beginning is so important. And if it's part of something at an educational level, that would be most useful, because let's admit the fact that not all households as well are able and are accepting or are as supportive as they should be when it comes to protecting their children.
Absolutely. And you touched upon a very a heated topic of debate is adding reproductive health education in school curriculum. It's such a, heated topic as well, because there is yes, you know, parents should have something, should have some opinion to what their children are learning, but at the same time, it shouldn't stop anyone else's children to learn about reproductive health, body consent, and body autonomy. Absolutely. Um, my last question for anyone who wants to answer: if we want to meaningfully reduce gender-based violence in the next generation, what is one change you believe we need to see, whether in education, community, leadership, or public policy? I actually would love to start with Ali, because I feel like we've gone around. I would love to start with Ali.
Yeah, I think, yeah, this is, really time. I took a gender-based and politics class last spring, and I think one important change is, just going back to having comprehensive, age-appropriate education around consent. And yeah, my Catholic school was progressive, and in some ways it wasn't. And so, you had parents who had the option to opt out their kids from that class, and but it didn't impact the learning of other people. And so I think that's super important, where it's, not having your beliefs or your belief systems impacting everybody else, from learning about safety and things like that. And yeah, I just think that it's important to keep having the conversations, not have a one and done conversation when you're in elementary school or when you're in middle school, but keep on having those discussions. And so I'm a big advocate of, not just having one health class out of the entire year that's dedicated to talking about this conversation, because I don't think that it's very productive. And so, but yeah, making sure that we're having different conversations at the appropriate levels throughout, preschool, elementary school, middle school, high school, and so forth.
Absolutely. And it also it's such a I think Kira mentioned this, the ecosystem, right? Yes, you learn from your school, but you also continue to learning in homes, in your household, with your families, with your community. And it's kind of just like a whole circle of like learning from someone, learning from someone, learning from someone. It doesn't stop somewhere. It should be a whole cycle of learning from different people, from different, from your peers, from different units of communities, right? Anything else, anything to add, Carolina?
Yeah, I was just thinking about what Ali said about the importance of that we talked before as well, the importance of routine and being consistent. Um, Repeating sometimes, you might feel, oh, I'm repeating always the same, but you're creating a routine, you're creating like a path in their brains for them to understand, to feel natural, and for them to understand that that is correct, that that is fine, and that that is how it should feel. It should feel okay to talk about, to have your own autonomy, and to be able to say no when you have to.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Anything
And
to add, Kira? Oh, sorry.
oh,
Go. I'm
sorry.
so sorry. Go for it,
No,
Carolina.
it's okay, it's okay. And also, I think Kira said something before as well, but this also like having in mind our personal comfort, because sometimes this social comfort can override our personal comfort.
Right.
So I do this because I feel it's what society wants me to
Hmm.
feel
Yeah.
or wants me to do. Um, and where you get that is when you're little. When you're little is when you start getting all these inputs also
Yeah.
about society and about how your community and your surroundings are treating certain topics.
Absolutely. Anything to add, Kira?
Maybe Karen could
Like
go
you're
first.
right. Plus one
Maybe
on
Karen
that.
could go first.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree with Ali and Carolina. A prevention-centered approach could lead to communities where young people are more confident in asserting their rights, more respectful of others' boundaries as well, and more willing to intervene when they see harm. If prevention truly began in early childhood, we would likely see, a generational shift
Yeah.
in how people understand, respect boundaries, and the overall relationships of everyone. So I think that would be it. The prevention-centered approach.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I
Kira,
love
any
that.
last?
I love the generational shift term. I mean, I've been taking away so much words from everybody today. I'm just so proud because this is exactly the aim of the book, right? We really wanted it to be a resource for this entire goal. We wanted to provide a tool for households, for schools, for policymakers to understand that there is an organization such as Breaking Silence Movement that provides tools such as this to make it easier for parents, for teachers, for guardians, to make it easier for children even to understand how they could take care of their body. For me, the number one thing, how we could avoid or decrease the number of gender-based violence is number one, of course, is an entire solution for support. Number two, is we need to be there for our peers, like on a personal level. We see a lot of people knowing about the issue but don't know how to handle it. And most of the time, 1 out of 2 of our friends will always have an experience that they will probably be in denial of. And we have to be that person. We have to be that advocate for them. It's hard in the beginning to understand where you could position yourself when such a sexual harassment in any aspect could happen. But it starts with us. And if we're able to actually protect those around us, then we would understand the bigger picture and the responsibility that we have to our community, to the people that we work with in our careers, our relatives, our family. And that's when we understand how important it is to be aware and to be knowledgeable on how we can address issues such as gender-based violence.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. I would love to open up the conversation or any questions that um any one of our participants or attendees here have any questions. If you have any questions, feel free to submit through the QA if you want to, but also raise your hand if you want to as well. And I'll do my best to direct a question to the appropriate panelist.
Just don't ask math questions.
Yes, no math questions. We're liberal arts.
Politics.
We're liberal arts politics. We do not take any geometry.
Yeah, we're not ChatGPT.
Yeah. Amazing. Oh, there we go. Simin.
Oh, hi, Simon. Where are you from?
Hello, I'm from Iran. I wanted to ask something on the chat because unfortunately I missed the beginning of your meeting. And I really am interested in this topic. It's very important as a girl facing this sexual harassment as a kid and having spent many years of my life trying to really overcome it and all the side effects. It kind of took me years of therapy, self like healing path. So I really wanted to know more about it, how I can, I tried to help with some younger generation, especially coming from Iran. You know, it's a closed society. It's not so open. You cannot talk openly about these topics. Even when you want to talk to teenagers, their parents they are reluctant or they, do not allow such thing to happen. So I wanted to know if this recording of your meeting will be available. I tried to put on the chat, but the chat is deactivated, so probably the other people also cannot ask questions.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let me see. I don't know why it's not, but yes, this will be available. First of all, thank you so much for that question, Simin, and applaud you for taking, applaud you for getting into therapy because I believe such a huge advocate of therapy because I feel like it's, if you exercise your body, you should be able to exercise your brain as well, right? But yes,
Yeah,
this will be available after days after this event. It will be available on YouTube and Facebook pages. You can follow us on Instagram and on Facebook. It's Breaking Silence Movement in full government breaking silence movement. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So I can also suggest to other friends, maybe they also are interested and can follow on YouTube. Thank you so much.
Yes,
thank
no,
you
please follow
for
us.
all
Yeah,
your efforts.
absolutely.
Simin, you are in Iran right now?
No, I am studying. I mean, I came out of Iran as like by a student visa 2 years ago. So I'm studying here my master in Germany.
Okay.
So currently I am in Germany. Yeah.
That's
Amazing.
nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
Maybe you message us on Instagram, and perhaps when I'm in Germany, we can see each other. Yeah, I would love to.
Lovely. Lovely. Yes, for sure.
You can follow us on
Thank you so
Instagram, Breaking
much.
Silence Movement. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
thank
No,
you
thank
so
you so
much.
much, Simin.
Thank you
Absolutely.
so
Anyone else who has any questions, any words of encouragement, any insights? All right.
The
Well,
chat box
well,
working?
um, I believe I'm not sure.
Can I try? Hi.
No, I believe you
Did it
can
work?
because it's to host a poll. It's not for everyone. But um, if there are no other questions, if you have any questions after this event, please feel free to message us on all of our social media channels. You can also email us at hello@breakingsilencemvmt.org. Feel free to send us any emails, any questions, any insights on this panel. But yeah, as we begin to wrap up today's conversation, I know it's almost 9 a.m. here in San Francisco, California. So I'm very, very excited for this. But I want to thank our panelists for sharing their insights, their experience, and perspective with us. One thing that stands out from today's event, at least for me, today's discussion, is that preventing gender based violence does not begin in courtrooms or crisis centers. It's actually where it ends. Or that's where we kind of like offer support, offer survivor, because the violence has already begun. It has already started, but begins much earlier. It begins in homes, it begins in classrooms, in communities, and in everyday conversations about respect, boundaries, and safety. And our hope is that the Great Body Safety Adventure becomes one small, meaningful tool that helps families and educators start these conversations earlier, both at home and in classrooms with greater confidence. So, if you're interested in the book, The Great Body Safety Adventure, it is now available on Amazon, and we are currently working to get that published worldwide. And it will also be available soon on our website. And so if you'd like to stay connected, like I said, with our work, you can follow us, follow Breaking Silence Movement on all of our social media. So that's Breaking Silence Movement, full government, on our Facebook, on Instagram. So search us up on Facebook, Breaking Silence Movement, and on LinkedIn as well, Breaking Silence Movement. And if you're interested in volunteering or getting involved in our advocacy and prevention work, please, we would love to hear from you. Please feel free to reach out to us at hello at Breaking Silence Movement, MVMT. Hello at Breaking Silence, MVMT.org. And so we're grateful to be part of this broader global community gathered through NGO Commission status of women, all working towards a future free from violence and grounded in equality and dignity. So thank you again to our wonderful panelists. You're all amazing, all very beautiful. I'm very, very, very grateful for everyone participating in this important conversation. And to thank you to everyone who joined us today for this important conversation. And so have a wonderful rest of your evening, morning, day, and thank you so much. Bye.
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 Bye.